Welcome to the RECO12 speaker meeting. My name is Justin. I am a child of God and an addict. And thanks to my God, the steps, and the fellowship of other addicts, I am sober one day at a time since June 19th, 2015. And for that, I am beyond grateful. Once again, welcome to the RECO12 speaker meeting. We are an organization whose addictions include alcohol, drugs, lust and sex, food, and gambling, just to name a few. We come together from all places, faiths, and backgrounds to learn the similarities of addiction and to gain tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. We invite recovering addicts with at least 1 year sobriety and who are actively working their recovery in their respective fellowships to share their experience, strength, and hope. On a live Zoom webinar each Friday at noon Central Time for 20 to 25 minutes. Then typically, we, the live audience, get the opportunity to ask questions of that speaker for another 20 to 25 minutes. If you're hearing this meeting in a recorded podcast form, which you are because this meeting was not recorded live, I'll get to that in a minute, and would like to participate as a live audience member in the future, please go to RECO12.com, that's RECO12.com, to learn more and to submit your email address there to receive weekly invitations. RECO12 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our 12th step in this manner. We gratefully accept contributions to help cover the cost of the Zoom platform, podcast platform, web hosting, and administrative costs. To contribute, you can go to RECO12.com/support, or you can click the link to PayPal that will be in the show notes of this meeting. When you contribute, please specify the meeting number. This is meeting number 55. Last week's meeting was with me. I had the opportunity to do an impromptu share and Q&A session with our awesome live audience. I'm not sure if it was great, but it was meaningful for me at least. If you missed hearing that meeting or any other meeting we have done, you can listen to them in podcast format by searching for RECO12 Speaker Meeting Podcast on virtually any podcast platform that you use. Or you can go to the RECO12 website and find it under the link Podcast. I have a quick favor for you. Since you are listening to this, if you are in a podcast format, hit pause right now. Go into your podcast platform of your choice and rate and review the RECO12 Speaker Meeting Podcast. It really does help us get this message out to more addicts who suffer and those who want to learn more about addiction, and for those who want diverse speakers about their own experience, strength, and hope. Now, one more word about our speakers before we introduce today's speaker and a little bit more about this meeting today. When we line up a guest speaker for a meeting, we ask them to seek guidance on what and how to present so that they can reflect the light that they have been given. That light will inspire hope, meaning, worth, and growth in each of us, the listening audience. Now, before I get to introducing our guest speaker today, I alluded to this a little bit earlier. I am traveling as this podcast would typically be recorded. I'm on the road and am unable to do a live recording. So Mary H., who is our guest, was kind enough to sit down with me earlier this week, and we just recorded it together. She gave the talk. I was the audience and asked the questions, and we had a great conversation. And I'm really excited for this meeting, for this conversation to get out to everybody out there listening. I believe that it will be very helpful. Now, Mary, she speaks to us today on the topic of freedom from recovery. Now, here's a little bit about Mary H., and you'll hear more about her here in a few minutes. Mary H. is a grateful recovering addict living in Murffreesboro, Tennessee. She is a multidisciplinary addict and works NA, AA, and SLAA. She has been clean and sober for almost 6 years and finds joy in her life through recovery, friends, family, and her fur babies. She never thought she would be where she is at 42, but is grateful to be alive and hopeful for her future. Take it away, Mary. The floor is yours.
Thank you. First, I just want to say I'm so thankful to be here and be able to speak and be part of this podcast, listening and being of service, and that, my life experiences have brought me here. Because like, you had just said for my bio, I didn't think I was going to be here at 42. But I also didn't think I was going to do the things that I did to get here. With that said, I'm Mary and I'm a grateful recovering addict. I heard the term multidisciplinary addict a couple of months ago, and it made sense to me just because I feel like it takes a village. So I work NA, AA, SLAA, therapy, my higher power, the whole nine yards. Back in November 2015, I was living in DC with my husband at the time, and my mom came up from Houston and said, "You're going to rehab." And I have a respectful fear of my mother, even at 42. And when she says she's going to do something, she does it. So I knew she wasn't leaving without me. So I thought, you know what, cool, fine. 30 days, a little vacation, no problem. She brought me to Murffreesboro, Tennessee, and I initially went in for drug and alcohol abuse. Probably about 3 weeks into the program, I asked if I could stay longer or what I needed to do to stay longer, because as I continued to detox and get my mind and body free of substance, I was able to kind of settle in, like start really doing some work. And at that same point, actually, my therapist had called me in for a session, and she said, "I talked to your husband and he knows you've been cheating." And I sat there and I looked at her and I said, "Are you sure it's me?" And she looked at me and I looked at her, and I feel like it was like 10 minutes, but it was like 30 seconds. And I said, okay, it's me. And I know, it's me. I know it's me. It's me. And she kind of laughed and she said, "Okay, now the real work begins." Because I came into treatment as a drug addict, as an alcoholic. I had no idea that I was a sex and love addict as well. I didn't even know that was a thing. So she started pulling out literature on SLAA and abusive relationships, because I also thought that if I wasn't hit, if it wasn't a physical altercation, then I wasn't in an abusive relationship, which is untrue. And so I read through the literature and thought, okay, well, he knows that I was cheating, and okay, I think I might be a sex and love addict too. Okay, well, that session's done. Let's go, fool around and keep doing this recovery thing. So the great thing about my recovery center was that we went to a lot of different meetings. So we went to ACA, SLAA, CODA, AANA, which was really cool because, it takes a village, and there's lots of different things, at least that I found out with me, that contributed to my abuse of drugs and alcohol. And I remember the first night they said we were going to a SLAA meeting. And I said, "I don't need to go to a meeting with a bunch of hoes and sit around and talk about our sexual exploits." And I say that almost every time I share, and everybody always laughs, because I feel like that's just such a stigma still around sex and love addiction. And sure as shit, I went to the meeting, and I think by the second characteristic, I was like, all right, I've hit the trifecta. I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict, and I'm a sex and love addict. And I heard amazing things, and I was sold in that meeting, in the bubble of rehab, surrounded by, my fellows, my like-minded, my therapist, my counselors. But what happens when I get, re-released into the wild? So I still continued to write my ex-husband in treatment. I still tried to think about how can we stay together once I get out of treatment. Knowing I wouldn't be able to stay sober, knowing that I would be crucified for the cheating and whatnot. And I was in treatment about 3 months. And the last 2 weeks I was there, my therapist called me in again, and she said, "Your husband filed for divorce and we have papers coming and blah, blah, blah." And I had a total meltdown, panic attack, started dry heaving, just terrible physical reaction. And it was just because the finality of it all. And then what was I going to do? Where was I going to go? Like, all my shit's up in DC and my animals are up in DC and I don't have a job and he has all the money and, all these things running through my head. And, I thought, well, you know what? I'll figure that out later. Let's just, finish out these 2 weeks in treatment. Then I was going to, a halfway house, and let's take one thing at a time, because I can worry about tomorrow's problems all day today, but they're still going to be there tomorrow. And I'm still going to have to, work those problems tomorrow. So the first year that I got out of treatment, I ended up getting a divorce, got all my shit from DC, got my animals, and I started negotiations with my therapist that maybe I wasn't a sex and love addict anymore, that maybe it was my ex-husband. Maybe if he was nicer to me, maybe if, I wasn't, fucked up on drugs and alcohol, maybe this, maybe that, then maybe I wouldn't be a sex and love addict. And each time I would propose these things to her in our sessions, I would leave after an hour and I'd be like, okay, you're right. Yep, I am a sex and love addict. And so it took me a year to really, surrender to that fact. Not that I was embarrassed. I wasn't embarrassed about it. I just knew that work was going to be a lot harder, because at the end of the day, it's not the drugs, it's not the alcohol, it's me. And I knew that changing the behavior and patterns I had when using, I started using around 18. That's 20 years of patterns and behaviors to change. When you form attachments at birth, you're changing patterns and behaviors from the time of birth. And that's a heavy pill to swallow. So I did that for the first year, and then finally was like, okay, let's do this thing. And because I thought, well, let me get my drugs and alcohol under control, and do life sober, and then I'll work on the SLAA stuff. And fought it for about a year. So I did that, and continuing to work with her, and started a meeting here in Murffreesboro just to try and, really dig in, because, for me, the spiritual awakening wasn't some, where the people on the street stop and the clouds part and the sun comes down and hits me and music plays. It wasn't anything like that for me. It was a slow evolution, a slow process. And as I continued to do the work, as I continued to be able to tie back childhood experiences to behavior that I now exhibit as an adult, and being able to make sense of it all, that's when I started to have the aha moments. That's when I was able to make sense of things, rather than, why am I like this? Why is this happening to me? I'm such an idiot. I'm such a slut. I'm such a, fuck up. Like, none of that. I don't use those words about myself anymore, because everything has a reason. Everything makes sense if I just stop and think about it. And why am I here? What brought me here? And then how do I get through it? So that started my freedom. And, that's why, I tried to stay in the grounding of my freedom from my disease, because I'm not normal. I don't even know what normal is, but that's okay. And I embrace that, because I know I have a disease. However, I'm not a slave to my disease anymore. I'm not a slave to the addiction. I'm not a slave to, when is the dope man going to be here? Do I have enough money? I'm not a slave to, when does the liquor store open? How much should I get? And how long is it going to last me? I'm not a slave to, oh, I hope he calls me. I hope he doesn't leave me on read. I hope he loves me forever and never leaves me, because then I'm nothing. And I was worried, because for so long, I did the behavior of, the drug addict and alcoholic, and even, with the sex and love addiction, and attributing to love, with my dad, if I'm pretty enough, if I'm smart enough, if I'm funny enough, then I'll get men's attention, or friends even, and they won't leave me, and they'll love me. And then that'll be it. If I dress the right way, if I say the right thing. And so I thought, how am I going to do life without my drugs? How am I going to do life without my alcohol? How am I going to do life without using my sexuality? How am I going to do life with not trying to manipulate and control people? I'm going to be boring and nobody's going to want to hang out with me. And it was the total opposite, because as I continue to do my recovery work, as I continue to sponsor and speak and shed light on the shame and shed light on this horrible addiction of disease, I find so much freedom, because I know that I'm living my truth, my core values and beliefs. And with that, there's freedom. I don't have to worry today about walking down the street and looking over my shoulder of somebody that, I stole from, I lied to, I slept with their husband, shit like that. I don't have to worry about that today. I don't have to worry about, I can't have two people in the same room because, I lied to her about what I did this weekend because I did something with him. And if they talk, then they're going to know, and blah, 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 and all the bullshit, chaos and drama that fueled me before. And when I talked to my mom about some of this stuff, she goes, shit, girl, you had to go to treatment to get yourself out of this mess. And thinking about any kind of lying or drama or anything that goes against my core values and beliefs makes my stomach hurt, makes my chest tighten, and it makes me very uncomfortable. And my mom told me at an early age, listen to your body. And I was like, yeah, of course. I listen to my body. Yeah, she doesn't know what she's talking about, but okay. And I always thought I did, but I was always using. So how can you listen to a body that is polluted with all kinds of, drugs, alcohol, false fantasies, etc.? Like, you can't. So now that I don't have all that running through me, I see things clearer. I would like to say I see people clearer. I have a tendency to see people's potential rather than who they truly are, which has burned me from time to time. But you know what? I've been left on red. I've been ghosted. I've been stood up. I've been lied to over the last 5 years. And the difference today is that I don't fall into a deep depression. I don't use drugs or alcohol. I don't lay in bed and think, oh, I'm worthless. I'm ugly. I'm fat. I'm gross. Nobody loves me. I'm going to be alone forever. Oh my God. I may cry a little bit, may cuss a lot and have a few cookies, and then I keep it moving, because at the end of the day, I've been through a lot of really hard stuff and I'm better for it. I mean, I don't regret my past. I feel like some of the ways that things revealed themselves, some people were hurt, and that's unfortunate. But it's brought me here today, which then I'm able to share my story to where hopefully, it will help other people. It helps me to continue to talk about it. It reminds me of just the blessings that I've gotten over the last 6 years. And, I tell my mom every year on my, birthday, on my sobriety date, I tell my mom she gave me life twice. Because she did. And every year she says, well, I mean, of course, like, why wouldn't I? And she even said to me too, she said, I thought if you were going to decide to be a drug addict and alcoholic, I wanted to make sure you were sober to make that choice. And that and I share that often with new sponsees and whatever, because who really makes that choice sober? Like, I don't know anyone that has. I mean, I don't know. I could be wrong. But for her to even just say, I wanted you to be sober and of clear mind to make that choice if that's how you wanted to live the rest of your life. And I wanted to give you that opportunity. And I was in a meeting actually today, and we're talking about choice and freedom, and had read from the big book on page 317, when I'm willing to do the next right thing, I'm rewarded with inner peace that no amount of drug could provide. It's always my choice, no longer at the mercy of my disease. And that freedom is the peace I have from being sober, the peace I have from working my substance addiction programs, the peace I have in working SLAA. I wish I could bottle it up and give it away. I wouldn't even sell that shit. I would give it away. And I do work SLAA so hard because I have found that if I don't take care of my codependency issues, my abandonment issues, my self-worth issues, my daddy issues are a real thing. Mommy issues are a real thing. If I don't take care of that shit, drugs and alcohol are quick to follow. Like in no time flat. They're just waiting there like that soft t-shirt that's really worn in and feels amazing. The pair of jeans that always look right, regardless of how much weight you've gained or lost. That I'm right here, girl. Let's hang out. You know me. And yeah, I know you. I know that you're going to get me into trouble. You're going to set my life on fire. And I just can't be a part of that anymore. So, it's actually cool we're doing this with 4th of July coming up because I always try and tell anyone new or anyone I talk to that you think you're free. I think that I was free when I was using, I thought I was free when I was single and doing all that shady shit, running the streets. I can do what I want, whoever I want, whatever I want. And I wasn't at all. I was a prisoner the entire time. And I can see that loud and clear now. And it's just an amazing gift that my mom said she would do again in a heartbeat. And that's why I try to be of service as much as possible, take on as many sponsors as I possibly can, and open to any and all avenues regarding recovery, because I don't know everything, and I'm always open to learn more, because I'm hopeful. Like, I'd said in the bio, I didn't think I'd be here in Murffreesboro, middle of nowhere, Tennessee at 42, but I am, and I am happier than I've ever been. And I'm living for myself, the best version of myself, and not the version somebody else wants me to be. So yeah, that's that in a nutshell.
Awesome. Mary, that was such a great story, such a great talk. I really appreciate that. And I loved several of the points you made that I'll get to here as we get into the Q&A portion of this. In the meantime, the first question I have for you is to talk a little bit about the different fellowships that you mentioned. You talked about AA, you talked about NA, you talked about SLAA. What is something that maybe each one of those gives you that's a little bit different than the other ones as you go through those?
So when I first started, because we went to a bunch of different meetings when I was in rehab. So the AA meetings I felt a very grounded group of people, and this is all my perception, right, in my experience, a grounded group of people, and more of like, I know people talk about old timers in the programs, but definitely a more conservative group of people that I had met within AA. And so I liked that kind of baseline, right, of that core group. But I still felt like I was kind of missing something because I do have a lot of drugs in my story, and didn't feel like that was spoken to a lot in the AA meetings that I went to because they were more conservative old time AAers. So you mentioned drugs and you might get, a side eye. So I went to NA, and I really, really like that fellowship because they speak all encompassing of drugs and alcohol. And a little more colorful group that I had found in a couple of the meetings here. And that was great. But I noticed that while I was doing my SLAA work in parallel, I noticed that when you take away the drugs and alcohol, what are people going to do? They're going to sleep with each other. They're going to use each other. And being 100% candid, I noticed behaviors and actions and people that were familiar to me because that's what I did when I was using. And I didn't want to do that when I was sober. And so I still do AA. I work, more on the LA West Coast Fellowship, but the SLAA really has been a lot more vulnerability in that program because you're talking about like some very deep core, whether it's sexual abuse or trauma or, anything relationship wise, it's just really deep, and not just, some surface stuff that's discussed in the other fellowships. Personally, I think everybody could benefit from a little bit of SLAA, but hey, that's not my side of the street to keep clean.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's very helpful to see your perception and your experience with each of those. I appreciate you sharing that. Now, I want to go back to basically the beginning of your share here. You said that your mom came up and said, hey, you're going to rehab. What was the rock bottom? And maybe your rock bottom was in rehab, I don't know. But what was the rock bottom that your mom saw that made her hustle up there and drag your butt to rehab?
So I started when just real quick. So when my husband and I first got together, we were living in separate cities. So I still had I could still use freely. And he was none the wiser. And we got married and moved up to DC, and I was away from friends, family, nobody else, in a house with just him. So that was lighter fluid on the fire. And it was a very dysfunctional, we should have never got married, but we did. And I would call home and they would hear me, like my sister or my mom, I would be drunk or high. And I would always think I was full, capacity, and I was not. I remember right before she came, I had went home for a visit and staying at my sister's house. And at that point I was carrying fifths of vodka in my purse. I was carrying liquor with me near the end. And I was taking a shot out of my purse, and my sister had come in and caught me. And I don't think either of us said anything, but I put it back in my bag. And then later that day, I was playing with my niece and I almost dropped her. And the next day, my brother-in-law said, you can't be around the children like this. This can't happen. And honestly, I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to come home as much. I'm going to have to just tighten up my drinking when I do come home. I didn't even think about quitting. That did not even cross my mind. And I went home back to my husband, and 2 weeks later, I went to go see a divorce attorney and was on the phone with my dad. I know I had just picked up a prescription and a handle of vodka, and I don't remember anything after that. And the police woke me up, and my car was parked in my neighbor's front yard, and I was in the back seat passed out. And I cried, and my husband came to get me, and I walked home, and he called my sister that night, and I was like, please don't tell anybody. We'll work it out. You can have my keys. You can have my money. Let's get some spreadsheets together. Let's get some checklists together. We can do this here, manage control situation. And my mom called and said, I'm going to come for a visit. We need to talk. And I said, well, let's just talk at Christmas. And she's like, no, I'm going to come at Thanksgiving. We're going to talk at Thanksgiving. And I knew, because I couldn't stop. I knew, I told myself, like, I won't drink during the week. I'll just drink on the weekends. Okay. I won't drink in the morning. I'll just drink at night. And she said, she saw me, and she said, she felt like the devil was in the house, lived in the house. And she's not like, she has faith and all of that. But she said there was evil in the house, and she saw me and was like, that is not my daughter. And She didn't even tell my dad, my siblings, nobody. She drove up there and got me and brought me to Tennessee. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a painful story that I think a lot of people can identify with in one way or another. But so what would you identify as your core or your killing addiction then?
I would say SLAA. I would say that because you're asking like what would be like, what's my core program? Where do I identify the most? I would say SLAA because of everything that I've learned about myself and about my childhood and the people I've chosen in my life and the decisions I've made. That's the work that I've needed to do all this time. That's the work that, some of my sponsees have substance abuse issues and some of them don't. But the ones that work another program like AA or NA, I remember one of my sponsees was like, I was missing something in NA, I was missing something in AA, and I came to SLAA and my recovery leveled up. And like, that's what I said, my recovery leveled up when I went to SLAA, because it's like all that other shit that I couldn't figure out. I knew something was there and I knew something like, yeah, I feel good because I'm clean and sober and all that, but there's still something like yucky there. That's what SLAA did for me to help open up and clean out.
Would you define the things that were addressed in SLAA, maybe things that are covered in steps 6 and 7, perhaps, character defects of character? Would you define some of that way, or is it different?
No, I would define some of it that way, but there's characteristics. There's like these 12 characteristics of sex and love addiction. And anyone listening or anyone curious, like I would say, because I'll send them, I show them and send them to my sober friends that are not in recovery or don't need to be in recovery. But to explain to them about SLAA, or like, you hear the word sex and automatically everybody shuts down or their mind goes to the gutter. So reading the 12 characteristics and, it's like, fearing abandonment, I don't want to be left, but I also don't want to be in a relationship. Well, why don't I want to be in a relationship? Well, because I'm scared that somebody's not going to like me. So what am I going to do? Oh, well, he likes party girls. So I'm going to go out, I'm going to drink, I'm going to be wild, I'm going to be promiscuous. See how all that's like tied in together to where I'm going to alter myself to be what somebody else wants me to be to make that other person happy. But then it all goes back to, well, because I'm not good enough, just how I am, for somebody to know who I truly am, that I'm not that party girl, or I'm not that, person that likes to be on display, like who I truly am. Because growing up, like, my dad's probably going to listen to this, but growing up, my dad, I'm the oldest of 3 and I was on a pedestal. I was the apple of their eye. I was the first grandchild on my dad's side. So I was always on stage. I was always hanging out with the adults. It was always, oh, look at Mary. Oh, look what she can do. Oh, she's so cute. I mean, I had a pony at my 3rd birthday party, for crying out loud. I didn't have friends at 3 years old and nobody that remember a fucking pony. Like, who has that? So my mom says, it's no big surprise things like unfolded as they did, which they did the best they could with what they knew, right? Because how they were raised and what they saw growing up is how they continued to raise and do with their children. But just being able to, it's a lot of family of origin stuff too. I would say SLAA is a lot of family of origin stuff, which was mind-blowing.
So. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Now, you mentioned this, and I want to get it as close to right as possible here. You said in your opening talk here, I'm not normal, and that's okay. I hear a lot of people who are not in the rooms who are not okay with not being normal. They just have accept it, and I didn't accept it for a long time. How did you accept the fact that you're okay with not being normal, and how do you move forward with that revelation?
Because, it's going to keep me stuck if I don't. Am I going to be pissed off at myself because I have diabetes? Am I going to be pissed off at myself because I have cancer, and hate myself for it? I have embraced my addict, and I hated my addict for a while, and would write letters to my addiction, and, just angry that, my inner addict, she ruined so much while I was using, and then she was ruining shit while I was sober. And then it was like, you know what, I keep fighting this, and I'm not saying, give in to my inner addict and go use and do whatever the fuck I want, but it's part of me. I am an addict. I don't even know what normal is. People throw that word normal around. I know I'm not normal, and that's okay. But I don't even know who is normal or what is the definition of normal. But I am extremely comfortable with who I am. I'm extremely comfortable in my skin. I just found a note in the books that my mom sent me when I was in treatment. I was cleaning some things out, and it's a little post-it. I put it up on my mirror, and it says, "I know you ain't perfect, girl, and that's okay with me." And I think that just the acceptance and love of me and who I truly am, especially since I have shown who I truly am to the people, around me the last 5 years, that, I'm not going to be liked by everybody, and that's okay. And I'm going to piss people off, and I'm going to get mad with myself. But ultimately the crux of it is I can't grow, and I can't be better tomorrow than I was today if I don't accept and love myself as is. And that's what I try and tell myself every day, is to try and be better tomorrow than I was today. And that's it. Just keeping it simple like that.
Yeah. So what are you said that you embrace your inner addict now. What are some of your inner addict's characteristics that are, I don't want to say noble, but are protecting maybe? What are some of those things that you embrace and say, thank you, inner addict, for this? Is there anything like that in your life?
I would say that my inner addict is selfish, and if left to her own, whatever laurels or whatever, she would just run over everybody. However, since I'm not using, I'm not selfish, but I stop and think about myself, and I stop and think about, okay, do I need self-care? Do I need to say no to this commitment because I have a ton of other stuff going on? Do I need to tell this person how I really feel because I'm starting to kind of manipulate the situation, and this person is getting the wrong idea type thing. So that helps keep me, grounded, a balance. I would also say that, when I was using, obviously, I was wide open, wild and free, air quotes, free, like I thought. And so I definitely, had impulse control issues before. But without adding drugs and alcohol to the fire, I still live in a very adventurous mindset. I still, may pull the trigger on something and not be I just bought a baby pool in the backyard the other day, didn't read the dimensions, and it's like the size of a teacup. So Jesus. But you know what? Classic Mary move. Because I'm like, hey, looks fun. Let's do it. But then that's, with balance and without adding drugs and alcohol to really fuel that out of control fire. So, and I embrace that for sure, because that's how my mom is, just, having an adventurous spirit. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, type mentality.
Yeah. Awesome. I can just imagine this little tiny teacup.
It's terrible. It's so embarrassing.
but isn't that such a better consequence to impulsivity than the alternative that you lived with for 30 years.
1,000%, because we don't have time for it today, but there are plenty of times where that impulsivity pulled the trigger on things. And I wish I had ended up with just a teacup sized pool in my backyard. And so now I can laugh about it, and I don't beat myself up like, what an idiot. I can't believe you just spent, $10 on this pool and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, you know what? I don't know. Maybe I'll have like a backyard redneck barbecue and use it as an ice chest. I don't know. We'll figure it out. And it's laughable because like my roommate came home, she goes, classic Mary, you didn't read the dimensions when you bought it online, did you? And I said, nope, sure didn't. And it's more of a, lovable thing about me. I would like, I like to hopefully think that, you know what? And like you said, that's buying a tiny teacup pool is the least of my worries today.
Awesome. So how do you mentioned in your talk that your spiritual awakening wasn't like angels singing and clouds parting and everything. How do you maintain a spiritual awakening today in your life of recovery?
So I pray. I don't, get on my knees and do like a big ceremonious thing, but that's just for me. Because I tried to have like that routine and it just didn't work in my life, and it didn't flow the way I wanted it to flow for me. So every morning I do ask, what can God take from me today? What can I give up control of today? And sometimes I say that multiple times during the day. Like I'll start to spin out and I can't breathe. And I'm like, holy shit, I've got this going on and that going on. And then it's like, stop, take a deep breath. What is in your control and what isn't? So I daily, multiple times a day, will pray to my higher power. I meditate, enjoy time outside, to stay grounded in nature, because nature and water is very important to me, hence the baby pool. And and my animals, and fellowship, like meetings, sponsorship, speaking. I mean, there are times like I'm speaking to a sponsee, or I'm speaking in a meeting, or just sitting and listening in a meeting, where something will hit and it's like, oh, wow. Let me write that down. Or even in therapy. I mean, I do lots of different things to make sure and maintain my sobriety, my sanity, and mostly positive attitude. I mean, this is not, rainbows and butterflies. I don't skip down the street. Like, I don't want anybody to think that I'm skipping and whistling to work every day, because it has been hard work, lots of blood, sweat, and tears. But like, it's been worth it. And I'm grateful for it, because there have been days that I've thought, is my life better because I'm sober? Is my life better because I've done all this work I've done? Logically, I know, yes, I am in a much better place than I was almost 6 years ago. But in that moment, for maybe 30 seconds until I reach out to someone or I stop and take a breath, I think, what's happening? Why can't I just be happy? Why am I not getting what I want? Well, just because I want something doesn't mean it's what's meant to be and what I'm supposed to have and what's right for me. And that's what I have to remember.
Yeah. One more thing, kind of right along with that. You mentioned, sometimes when life isn't going the way you want it, you cry a little, you cuss a lot, you eat a few cookies, and you move along. I love that. I think that got the 3 C's and move along. Cry a little, cuss a lot, and eat some cookies and go away. So how does that help you in that process of moving on? Does it help to acknowledge by crying, to express some anger by cussing, to get some consolation through the cookies and move on? Tell me how that works in your life with that?
It does, because before I would be like, fuck that, I don't care. and just act like I don't care, push the feeling down and go along about my business. But it always comes back up, at least for me. And from what I've seen in other people I've worked with, it always comes up, whether it comes up tomorrow or comes up years later and you flip your shit on somebody because you didn't address, that breakup 5 years ago. So feeling my feelings is very important. And I try to do that. And my therapist says, it's fine to sit there for a minute, but don't, pitch a tent and live there. So I do feel my feelings, and I do, if I'm sad about it, then I address that I'm sad about it and angry about it. And what happened in this situation? Why am I angry about it? Am I crying because I'm frustrated? I'm pissed off and I took advantage of? Did I do everything I could have done in that situation? Like if it was a relationship or something, yes, I did. Or no, I didn't. And now I know what I can do better. And then, the cookies are just to feel a little bit better. But then not too many, because then I got a bellyache. And then I'm like, why did I do this to myself? And then that's a whole nother process of shit I got to work through.
All of their shame cycle right there.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right.
Just a few cookies, nothing too much. Exactly. Awesome. I love this. This has been such a good conversation. Are there any other words of wisdom or points that you really feel like you need to make before we kind of close this conversation down, Mary?
I do. I have this passage I want to read, and I try and read it anytime I speak. It is in a book written by Brene Brown. I'm not sure if you know Brene. Amazing. And it's a piece of a speech from Theodore Roosevelt. It says, "It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. Because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end triumph of high achievement, and who in the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly." And when I lead my meeting on Tuesdays, I always thank everybody, and they should be recognized because we're in the arena. We're in the arena of recovery, and we're all out here getting our asses kicked by work or bills or relationships or whatever it may be. And just showing up to a meeting, just showing up for myself every day, showing up saying, you know what, Mary, you are loved. You can do this. Snap out of it. It's going to be okay. Let's get this day started. Like we're in here, we're getting our asses kicked. And just to, give myself and everybody, give themselves some grace. The shit is hard. All of it is so hard. And it's just admirable even being here. And I'm grateful for, the ability to be here. So yeah, that's it.
And I'm grateful for that you're here too, Mary. I really have appreciated your talk, your candor, and the things that you've shared there. I'm going to go ahead and into this closing reading, and then after that, we'll close it out with the third step prayer. Did you want to be voicing that? Are you okay doing that?
Yeah, I can do that.
Awesome. All right. So let me read through this, and then we'll get over to that. Thanks again, Mary. That was a great RECO12 weekly speaker meeting for all addicts and those wanting to learn more about addiction and the recovery therefrom. If you have questions for Mary or for anybody else who has spoken, please go to our community at RECO12.com/forum and join in, get those questions taken care of. And you can also email me at RECO12pod@gmail.com. And if you have questions directly for Mary, I can relay those to her. Keep coming back. I invite the audience to come back next week. If you've not yet gone and signed up to get on the weekly email list so that you can join in these live meetings that are typically live every week, each Friday at noon Central Time, get in there and do that. And next week, we'll be hearing from Kevin M., whose talk will be entitled Slow the Game Down. He's a high energy and very well-spoken speaker, and I'm really looking forward to having him join us. All right, now let's launch off into the rest of our day with the third step prayer that Mary is willing to give.
All right, let's just take a moment of silence for those addicts still out there suffering. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bandage of self that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life.
Thank you very much, Mary. Everybody keep coming back. It works when I work it, so work it. You are worth it.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching